Hey, this is Jay.
And this is Chelsea.
Welcome to the Shifting Perceptions podcast.
We are bringing you inspiration to live a more creative lifestyle because our favorite people are the ones that choose the path less traveled.
This week's episode is with Denver art gallery owner David B. Smith. We start our chat with David discussing how he shifted his path in life by using a MySpace Forum to create the reputation he needed to develop the reputable and dynamic art gallery he owns today. So how do we define art? Since that's a question Jay and I like to debate together, basically daily, we were excited to hear David Smith discuss the many boundaries being broken in the modern art world, how he sees the impact on social change through edgy installations and impactful displays in his gallery, and then we get to probe David with our questions on how does a gallery owner pick and choose their artists? What is the best way to approach a gallery? And what are the things that excite him in the art world? Come find out why David's gallery has recently been called an exciting contrast of cutting-edge works by the New York Times, and how on earth Dave Matthews Band's own Stéphane Lessard brought us all together. I know I say this a lot, but this is a good one. I hope you enjoy every minute. Let's jump in.
Hey, David. Thanks for joining us, man. We are really excited to catch up with you. We'd like to talk about your life, talk about the gallery. How the heck are you, dude?
Thank you so much for having me. Honored to be on this show.
Right
Things
on.
are well. Life is good.
Good.
It was funny because we were just talking a moment ago doing the mic check. And,
Mic check, 1, 2.
1, 2, 1, 2. We're talking about how, it's like all of our lives are so busy. So
Yeah.
it's funny when I'm asked how things are going. I always want to say that it's busy, but there's so much other stuff going on and we're all so busy.
And then we were having
Especially
some
you two.
some magic talk about coffee and what a coffee snob you are.
He's throwing you under the bus fast.
Slam!
No, not at all. But I was curious to know whether you two were coffee drinkers, and I'm glad to know that you are.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
we're totally. I mean, Jay we were off for a while because of pregnancies, etc. But no, I was counting down the seconds until
I've been
I could have coffee
decaf
in my
for
hand.
five years, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's
Decaf,
funny.
Nice.
Yeah, it's when Chelsea got pregnant with Summer, we switched to decaf. I switched to decaf.
No,
and she
for the
did too,
record,
yeah.
he's decaf because he just can't control his tendencies. That's really what it comes down
I'm
to.
like a heroin addict. Like if you get like a whiff, if I get a whiff of caffeine, I'm like hardcore back.
And then he
in,
just
so.
needs 4 pots for the day to get through it. So he just
Okay,
goes.
that was going to be my next question: hot or cold?
Oh yeah, so hot. So
Hot.
I do iced coffee because I like espresso, so you can shift into cold pretty easily. I don't like iced coffee, regular coffee.
So I think there's no greater way to start this conversation than to say how we met, because what a cool story, right? So most people that might be listening to this will see, Jay is an artist and David owns this amazing gallery and that must be how they met. But nope, we actually met backstage at a Dave Matthews concert. And we actually we were lucky and blessed enough to be in the family and friends VIP backstage section, because we share a mutual friendship and we are both huge fans of as well. Stéphane Lessard, the bassist of Dave Matthews. What's up, Stéphane? So yeah, that's how we met. We were backstage and Stéphane kind of indirectly connected us and we started chatting, and that was how long ago? Was that before we had kids? I don't remember.
I think the
Oh my
boys were
gosh,
just born.
I think we had young ones.
Yeah, 3 or 4 years ago. Somewhere
Yeah.
in there. Yeah.
It's all a blur.
Yeah, I know. A couple glasses of wine in, and we got to hang out with you guys for a while. It was really awesome.
It was so much fun, and I appreciated the opportunity just to get to know you both, and then even that following year, it's interesting how you can kind of develop these friendships with people over time, and just found a nice connection. And thinking back to some phone calls with Jay, and when we had some health issues, even in my family, and you're being a good ear and person to chat with, and it's just it's a pretty magical thing the way that it all came together.
We've had a good almost pen pal type relationship, and then we were lucky enough to catch up with you in person on our last little tour through Denver last year.
Well, I wanted to ask, so going back to that point, I feel like you were in transition a little bit with your galleries? Like, how long have you been David B. Smith? And you were a gallery previous to that, correct?
We were. So I started out the gallery. It was called Limited Addiction. And after about a year and a half, we ended up transitioning to David B. Smith Gallery, which not really a big fan of having my name in there, but it's kind of a norm within the art world. So
what does the B stand for? I have to know.
The B stands for Brian.
Okay.
And
it's
rather
not like Bartholomew
not
or like anything super artsy.
I'm sorry?
I said it's not like Bartholomew or anything like very fancy. And
no, I wish it was. I was going to ask you what your guess would be, but yeah, no, it's Brian, and it's I felt like it's something that I had to put in there because there's a famous artist, David Smith, who passed away a number of years ago. But I was afraid that if I called it David Smith Gallery, that his estate might come after me.
Isn't that so funny? It's like, no, it's my confusion. Name too. Yeah, it's so funny. Well, so same location for both of those galleries?
We ended up moving right about that same time. But now
so where were you before?
Located right in downtown Denver, an area called Lodo for Lower Downtown. And I've been there now for almost 10 years.
Wow, that's awesome. So starting off with that gallery model, talk to us a little bit about your learning curve with that. Like, what brought you into doing galleries? Were you an artist yourself? Where did that all start?
So I am not a visual artist, just have a real love for art. And that wasn't my background at all. I just kind of came into it where my background's a little bit more in business and marketing, and had just kind of worked a number of different jobs. But I guess the long story short, and this is going way back here, but prior to Facebook, kind of in that era of MySpace, a couple years before that, I had started a discussion forum with a couple other friends around the country where we were just talking about art. And, that was something kind of new and different at that time. So then, as more people kind of joined this discussion forum, artists, they'd either find out about it or we'd notify them about it. And then they would send something out in their email blast, and say, oh, you can connect with other fans and, and you should just go check this out. And then it kind of grew and grew. And then we had over 1,000 registered members from all over the world. And, artists, collectors, creative people, we had CEOs were reading this. And, it just felt like, I should open a gallery and call it Limited Addiction, which was the name of this discussion forum. And then shortly after opening the gallery, ended up closing down the forum because it seemed like too much of a conflict, but it all just kind of came together organically.
I know from like our conversations in the past, you had mentioned that Limited Addiction was a slightly different curation, a different collection of art than you're currently doing. How has your curation and your actual collection of work transformed with that?
Yeah, I think it's just as I kind of was exposed to more art, and continued to learn about things just kind of on the fly as the gallery was operating. For me, I started to realize that I had this podium with the gallery, and I could help to build this audience for artists and help to expose their voices. And I think for me, over time, I took a little bit more of an interest in, helping artists execute projects that they might not be able to accomplish, without the support of a gallery like mine. Mm-hmm. So work that would be less commercially minded at times, maybe addressing some more challenging topics. And, yeah, just kind of being a little bit riskier and taking more chances. So now it's, for me, it's kind of this balance between, showing work along those lines and then just, always showing fantastic artists, but, trying to find that balance where we can keep the lights on and keep moving forward as a gallery.
So in doing some research of you before our interview, I saw a great quote from the New York Times describing your gallery as cutting edge, which is pretty awesome. And I know you take pride in having like emerging talent, both national and international. And your gallery has been described as both culturally, I can't say that word, relevant and intelligent. More intelligent than I can say the word, apparently. But I would love for you to speak on how you choose your artwork. And I ask that because in following you since we've met and looking online, it's very cutting edge. And some of the stuff, I think most people that don't understand the art world, which is probably most people, might look at some of like the installations or some of the more avant-garde work and not really understand how it sells, who buys it, how it gets reassembled, like the whole aspect of modern art a lot of people don't understand. Can you kind of touch upon that a little bit?
Yeah. So like to keep it relevant, so I'm thinking about the current exhibitions that we have up in the gallery. So it's like we have two spaces. There's this kind of primary space, which is the majority of the gallery, and then a small room that we call our project space, project room. And we'll often have installations or work that's a little bit more site specific, a little bit more temporary. But in the main gallery right now, we have an artist who, his name is Christopher Russell. And like many of the artists that I like to show, I'm always looking for artists that are kind of approaching art in new ways, and pushing boundaries and always, continuing to kind of push and change their craft and aesthetic and their message a little bit. So, we have this one artist that kind of pioneered this process of art making where he takes these photographs and then using an X-Acto blade, scratches these really intricate drawings into them, so here's this very unique process. Again, this is an artist, Christopher Russell. But what I really love about that work is that there's, on the surface, it's absolutely beautiful, but also conceptually, there's a lot going on. So, somebody who's not really following art or, that knowledgeable, it's on the surface, it's a beautiful picture that you can look at and you can recognize the fact that, this is somebody who's talented and has a lot of skill. But again, as you start to learn a little bit more about the work, you realize that there's these art historical references that are in there. He's thinking about a little bit with like identity and politics. So again, this interest in work where you can also dive a little bit deeper into it. And then in our project room right now, we have a group of artists, primarily LGBTQ artists that are, exploring gender and identity and kind of doing it in this really fun and playful way. And, again, for me, it's fun to then, counterbalance an exhibition like Christopher Russell with this, immersive installation in the gallery that, kind of challenges and pushes people a little bit.
So I love talking about that side of it because I think I want to hear which parts of this are the most fun for you. So is it that curating? Is it meeting new artists? Is it just the discovery, like reaching out and meeting people? Like what part of this is the thing that you're like, this is what I do it for?
Oh my gosh, all of the above. Like many jobs out there when you're working for yourself, you have your own business. It is absolutely challenging. There's a lot of pressure and having a gallery like this, where I'm showing this balance of work. And again, A lot of times showing this artwork that isn't commercially minded, that adds a little extra pressure on the gallery. So, first and foremost, I mean, I love what I do more than anything, and I love waking up in the morning and checking emails and checking in with people. So I think it's a matter of finding these artists that inspire me, and then reaching out to them and building relationships and having the opportunity to talk about their work and show the work and share the work with others. And then also, do what I can from my end to help build careers as much as possible. But yeah, the personal interaction, having a collector base and meeting new collectors, and just being able to talk about work, and even I'm thinking about collectors because, again, we're a commercial space and we sell artwork, but it's really about just making artwork available to the public. Galleries are like free museums. You don't have to pay a fee to come in and see what we have at the gallery. So anybody can just walk in off the street. And I think, the times that excite me the most are when somebody comes in and they're like, I don't know anything about art. I don't know how this works, but I was just walking by and you have some really cool stuff in your place. And it's like, all right, well, come in. If you want to talk about it, let's do that. And for me, those are the moments that can be the most rewarding.
I was going to ask, so considering you are a business, and I know it is a tough business at times, how do you draw the line between, let's say you find an artist that you feel is speaking to people through their work. He or she might be creating work that makes you question society or authority, or is a social statement and powerful, yet maybe their work, you might look at it and say, I'm not really sure if it's something that my demographic might purchase. Do those always have to be aligned where they both are impactful and sellable, or do those sometimes, are they mutually exclusive of each other, and maybe it's impactful and creates an experience for your gallery, but maybe it might be harder to sell? How do you differentiate that?
They can be exclusive. I mean, if there's an artist or artists out there that are creating work that I think is very interesting, and there's a message that needs to be shared, then I want to find a way to show that work in the gallery. So it's, again, for me, it's the fact that I'm passionate about what I do. And if I see art that, it'd be good to give it a venue, give it a space, and be a megaphone, then I'm going to embrace that opportunity to do just that.
Are there boundaries in the gallery world as far as like if something is, if it's so edgy, you're almost like uncomfortable putting it up, or is that just in the art world that's a good thing? You know what I mean? Like, do you ever hit those boundaries for yourself?
Occasionally I will. And, then I kind of remind myself that this is the beauty of the art world, is that it's important to put myself outside of that comfort zone every once in a while. Like I'll mount a show, again, I'm thinking of this show that we have in our project room right now, which, is definitely, pushing some boundaries, a little bit more challenging, but it's smart work. It's it's exciting work, and it makes a statement that many people otherwise, or it sparks a conversation that otherwise might not be had with people that are coming through the gallery. And I think it's important to give that voice. But while we're talking, it makes me think of a conversation that I had with this one director of a museum who we were talking about putting exhibitions up. He was talking about what it's like at the museum, and I'm obviously approaching it from the gallery perspective. and he was talking about how even at, when they are putting up a show at the museum, there can be a little bit of, self-doubt, concern about how well something's going to be received, maybe just lacking a little bit of that confidence. And I thought that was really interesting and eye-opening for me to think about, here's this director of a big museum, who is kind of expressing that, there's always these moments of self-doubt, not always approaching everything from this perspective of overconfidence, but, thinking about how other people are going to perceive what's up. And it made me realize, like, okay, if somebody in that position can think this way, then I can too. And then it made me realize that if I'm not thinking that way enough, then I need to be pushing boundaries a little bit more.
That's actually exactly what I was just thinking. I think that's the exact lesson there, is that if you're not feeling a little uncomfortable, are you even pushing the boundaries that you originally set out to push, So
yeah, it's like you got to challenge yourself, you got to challenge others, and I think that's just important to keep things interesting, to keep life interesting.
So, coming at the question that I asked you previously from the opposite end of the spectrum, do you come across artists that are just so incredibly aesthetically appealing, like beyond belief, that completely, captures your attention, or it would sell great or people would love it, but there may be no narrative behind the work, there's no social statement, it's just this artist just creates work that's beautiful? Does it have to have both elements?
It doesn't. I don't think that it has to. I think there's a huge value to just beautiful work. Like, you can think about abstraction, where there's no representational image. And, I think it's important to be able to, look at a canvas, for example, and if you have a wonderful painter that is kind of approaching their craft particularly in a new way. But if you look at just an abstract painting, that can move you, and I think that's just as important, as other work that's out there. It's just there's different kinds of artworks appealing to people in different ways. And I think, I think what's most important is, there's no like right or wrong approach to, being an artist or learning about art. At the core, it's most important is to find work that, that moves you. And that's the first step to appreciating, the art world.
I mean, art is just so incredibly subjective. So I have a couple of questions based on that. So a lighter question first. So do you and your wife have similar tastes in artwork when it comes to your own home?
That's a good question. Yes and no. I think there are times where I'm interested in hanging a piece of art that she might be a little bit less inspired about. So for me, then it's like, that's where I kind of put my gallery hat on, and it's like, all right, well, this is an opportunity to talk about the work a little bit more and, explain what I find particularly moving or interesting with the work. And that doesn't always lead to success, but for the most part, I think we'll tend to be on the same page.
And so, like, based on that question, like, we all have, various circles of friends of like completely diverse people with different tastes. Are there like questions or debates or conversations you have with close friends or family that walk into your gallery and just have completely different opinions on things? Are there any talking points or like, highlights of those millions of conversations that you must have had at this point about the subjectivity of art that you use to explain? And I ask that just so people listening, if they're not necessarily, knowledgeable or fluent with the art world per se, that they could maybe listen to your answer on this and say, oh, okay, I didn't look at it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to answer that, with just kind of a general answer, because for me, it varies based on, who the artist is, what their work is, and then that affects the conversation, and maybe the entry point to talking about the work. But I don't always expect everybody to just, to come into the gallery and fall in love with what we're showing. And again, for me, I think that's what, something that I kind of pride myself on with the way that I curate the artists that come through, is that it changes. It's always something different. So, what we have one month you might not like, but the next month you might have a different feeling about it. But I think, as far as family that might come in and visit from out of town, or, like I have a number of circles of friends and, a ton of friends that aren't familiar with the art world and really don't follow it beyond, looking at an email blast that they might get from my gallery. But I think it's just, it's fun. People will kind of respect that there's something to the art. So if they're not particularly moved in that given moment, they're open to the conversation, and again, understanding, why am I interested in it? Why is it important enough that, we're going to install it in the gallery for a 4 to 6 week period?
Yeah. So for speaking for artists, one of the, character flaws or quirks that most artists have is the struggle of dealing with criticism. And I want to know if you have advice for creative people in general on that topic, both as, as a curator of work, you must occasionally receive some criticism, but then you're also dealing with these dozens or hundreds of artists' personalities who are then potentially dealing with occasional criticism. Is there a mindset or a philosophy that you use to deal with your own criticism, and also as like the advisor to the artists that you represent?
And dealing with criticism, I think it is important to just always be positive and get your work out there. Like two different thoughts come to mind. One, a lot of times with artists, somebody might send us an email and share some of their work, and or come in and talk to us, about their work. But what I always tell people is that, again, it's a world of different opinions that are out there. And, it's just super important to stay positive and keep pushing yourself and getting your work out there, and just kind of remaining positive. And if somebody reaches out to the gallery and, we're not necessarily interested in showing the work, it's not necessarily a criticism of the work or reflection on the work itself, but it just might be, the question of, does it fit into the bigger picture of, what we're doing at the gallery? So, again, there's always going to be critics. There's always going to be people out there who will be, critical of what you're doing, and you just need to continue to push and listen to that feedback, and certainly take that into consideration.
Is that listening and absorbing feedback for some artists is so difficult. I wanted to ask, because you kind of started off dropping that MySpace bomb in the beginning.
I feel like every episode we've had
there's a MySpace
reference.
Yeah. We're bringing it back. That's what's going on.
We're bringing it back.
We have a lot of friends from a long time ago.
No, I wanted to ask, since you've been in this business for, that's kind of the amount of time that we've been in the promoting art business, but talk about how that technology side of things has completely changed. Like, how is that, like, what are you seeing as far as that big change in art because of technology?
It's unbelievable in the art world. I mean, just in the 10 years, it's a totally different ball game. I think for me, what's most interesting, now I'm thinking particularly about Instagram, but this idea that, now that all artwork is available for viewing online, like we mount a show at the gallery, and then, we have photos that go onto the website so people all over the world can view the work. And, I think what's most interesting is that now there seems to be a little bit more of a trend and focus on, showing exhibitions of work or artists that might make artwork, thinking about how they can make it so it's going to look its best on a format like Instagram, where then you might look at the artwork in real life, and it doesn't hold up to this little square image that you're going to view otherwise on your phone or maybe on your computer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's so interesting. That's really we just actually were walking through Home Depot, right?
Yeah.
We're like walking through Home Depot, and there's like they now have this setup of literally a TV that they call the picture frame, and it's like the highest resolution so that you can just purchase digital artwork now and have it framed in this television, like circulating.
Yeah, that's like the future, I'm sure, like
so wild.
For 2D art at least, which is kind of cool and scary at the same time.
It's cool and scary, and I think that could replace, it's like, Jay, you make an awesome painting, you make a great print of it, and maybe in the future this digital format might start to replace this, the paper.
The print
maybe not. I
instead
kind
of
of
the
hope
original.
not. I like, the tangible item, but at the same time, it can't replace, if you're looking at one of your paintings, you're going to see this beautiful brushwork,
right?
This texture, and you're not going to get that when you're looking at a TV screen. So it's interesting, and maybe, in a sense, whatever those companies are, they're kind of trying to figure out and put their finger on the pulse of, what the future is going to be. But I still don't think we know that yet.
So I wanted to ask you, so many artists I talk to or I meet at shows seem to just assume that getting discovered is by a gallery is like the only way you're ever going to do anything with art. And like I've had a different experience with that. I know you know artists that have both taken the gallery route and other less traditional routes. Can you talk about maybe if an artist is listening and they think, well, if I'm not discovered by a gallery, if I'm not in a gallery, I have no future. Can you talk about some other avenues to success, or also when an artist might be ready to approach someone like yourself, and how they might do that?
Yeah. I think that first and foremost, before even really sharing images of your work and kind of creating your own brand and identity, one thing to mention would be the importance of always editing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of try to apply this through all different aspects of my life. But, if you're an artist, always have this nice kind of tight, cohesive presentation. So whether you're just, trying to build, like a social network following, or whether you're creating this, package to market yourself to an art gallery, always just have the best of the best that's there, and available, kind of like how, thinking of the analogy, of the Dave Matthews Band, for example, they don't just make 8 songs or whatever and write those and then put all that new material on an album. There's editing that happens, with any band that's out there. You need to write a ton of new material and explore it and then record it. And then, a fraction of that is going to be what's released into the public for people to experience.
So
and I think that's an important thing for people to realize, is that, it's, I think when it comes to artwork, it's not a matter of quantity, it's a matter of the quality, and you always want to, have that best foot forward.
So what does that that pattern look like? So when you look at someone and you're like, oh, this guy's got it. Like this is gonna go somewhere. I know that there's many different ways to make that happen, but what does that path look like? Like the classic path of like, does it start digitally? Does it start like, oh, they just had a big gallery opening and then it launches from there? Like when you see an artist on the right path, what does it look like?
Yeah, and again, I mean, it's kind of interesting thinking about that, because I don't necessarily think there is one right path. So I don't know if I really have a magical answer to that, but I think it's a matter of taking every opportunity you can as an artist to get your work out there. And I think any venue where you can do that is fair game, so whether it's the coffee shop down the street or, wherever else that there might be an opportunity to show the work, like get it out there. I'm thinking of another curator at another major museum who we were having a conversation, and, he's like, oh, I was just getting my coffee this morning and there's this really cool show up. You got to go over and check it out, and then we were together and we pulled up the artist online and started, doing a little bit of research and then talking about it. And to me, that really reinforced this idea that, it's about exposure and just, getting everything out there. So again, it's, I don't know if there's one particular path, like what worked for you, Jay, might be different for someone else that's listening.
Mm-hmm.
But I think just, keeping yourself as professional as possible, and again, seizing those opportunities. One other major piece of advice that I would drop in there is that for, artists that are emerging and looking to get their work out there, the way that you're going to approach, whether it's a gallery or a nonprofit organization, just realize that there's going to be countless other artists out there that are trying to reach out to these same places. And, going back to the idea of we're busy, we're all so busy in our day-to-day jobs. And, if we're constantly getting emails or materials sent to the gallery from artists that are interested in working with us, and you'd be amazed how few of those artists that are reaching out are taking the time to make their message personal. And I think this, especially in this day and age, like finding ways to personally connect is what sets you apart from everyone else.
Yeah.
So instead of like either a mass email or, something generic, where it's, it's the exact same thing that's pitched to a number of different places. It's like, take just a few minutes, do a little bit of research, and then, find a way to, to make your case a little bit more. So, if somebody's reaching out to a gallery and they're interested in a show, just go online for a few minutes, research, and then say, here's how I could see myself fitting in, just have a little bit more of that knowledge. And if I know somebody's taking the time to do the research, then I'm going to give them that time back.
Right.
And
I think that's every time
no
we
different
try to
than a job interview.
Exactly. I was just going to say, every time we try to fill a spot at either of our companies, and we just get these like
generic
resumes,
emails, like,
well, with no email, even just a resume or just like pictures, and we're like, what do you want us to do with this?
I read a book a long time ago when I was thinking that I was going to get a real job, and somewhere in the book it said like you said, to do something outlandish. And I think one of the crazy recommendations was like, why not just mail a box with like a watermelon in it
No,
or
they
something?
said no box. It was just
Or
a label on a
Right?
watermelon.
What book was that?
I don't
Just a
remember.
watermelon.
But it just always stuck in my head. I'm like, why not? That's great. And
Yeah.
when I was looking for graphic design jobs when I first graduated college, I remember thinking about that. And on all my resumes, I would like draw a drawing or something custom or do something that just stood out. And it worked, and it's good advice to do some extra work, do some extra effort. I think so much of being an artist, like you said, is really polishing your image and creating a narrative and marketing, which I have a great question on that. So it seems like from hearing you talk about it and from talking with you in the past that, there is a huge amount of creativity and like not only the curation, but like finding the artists. Have there been any like favorite success stories of artists that you found and discovered that then went on to being huge and you were like, yeah, I did that?
Yeah, I mean, over the years, there's a few artists that I've shown where, at first they, their audience might be a little bit more limited, but the right opportunities come along, and whether that's, art fans and collectors, just getting excited about the work and talking about it, and then, they build this significant audience, or maybe it's an artist that is creating really interesting work and now all of a sudden they're being recognized and getting exposure in museums. There are, it's a pattern that we've seen over time. And, at that point, it kind of becomes this moment where, you need to work closely with an artist to help them kind of make the right decisions. And, and one realize that, it takes time, and it's always like, no matter what profession we're in, there's always growth that's going to happen. And, success is not always guaranteed. I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but I think,
okay.
That's something interesting that I've seen over time is just, seeing an artist get a bit of success and then, helping them continue to push themselves and challenge themselves and, not take the success for granted.
Yeah. I think that's well said. Well, I feel like that's pretty easy to do if you found success on like a couple pieces that were pretty bold and then figuring out what direction, this fan base is now going to follow. But I wanted to ask, so you're in Denver, which, as you know, we absolutely love. Jay's actually drinking out of his Colorado coffee mug.
Yes,
I
picked it out especially for you.
But we adore Denver, and actually the art scene there is phenomenal. But have you ever, do you compare yourself to other cities? How is Denver unique in the art scene?
I'd like to think that Denver's a unique thing, but I think there's, a ton of cities across the country, across the world that are, just kind of in similar positions. It's a very exciting time here, and the city is just growing exponentially, which I think is, it's a good thing. I think that poses some interesting challenges to the city in terms of how it helps to grow responsibility and be able to sustain this, this growing community. But yeah, I mean, I think it's an exciting time to be here, and I love Denver because it's kind of this medium-sized city where, I always like to say that, it's small enough that you can find a way to make your footprint here, and to really tap into the arts community or whatever community you want to be a part of, and you can find ways to enhance what's happening and help it grow. And that I love about Denver. But on the flip side, I always like to say that we're a gallery that's based in Denver, but we're not just a Denver gallery. And by that, I mean, we have this international audience with the gallery, and we do what we can to the gallery and participate in various art fairs nationally that expose us to art collectors and art fans from all over the world. And it's a matter of trying to be here in Denver, but operate with this this international profile.
Yeah, has that changed a lot? Just out of curiosity's sake, I feel like, the 70s, 80s, it was all the artwork was coming out of New York City. It was like, this is setting the tone for the rest of the world. Is that still a thing because of the digital world? Is it very different now, like with that stuff? Like, great art obviously can come out of anywhere, but you feel like trends were set in like that New York scene?
Chelsea, you absolutely nailed it. And so, like, when I started the gallery just over 10 years ago, there were artists that I would reach out to who were like, I don't know if I really want to show in Denver. I'm already showing in New York or Los Angeles, and I'm thinking about, London or Berlin. And, and I try and make this case for Denver. And at times there would be interest, and at times there wouldn't be. And most often, it's kind of this idea that like, oh, you need to be an artist showing in New York City. And that's changed completely, in my opinion, within the last, like even 4 or 5 years, where now I think those walls are kind of being broken down, and the art world in general kind of sees the value of all these different cities and what they offer. And I don't know, it's just a completely changing landscape.
Yeah,
and that's
awesome.
Especially being in Denver, that's kind of an exciting thing.
The street art thing is so huge right now, and pop art and street art. Are there any art movements that in particular you are excited about that maybe the mainstream is not caught onto yet? Do you have any predictions of where the art world might shift?
That is a good question. I mean, it's exciting to see how perception of art changes, and whether it's street art or it was a thing called Meow Wolf, which is in Santa Fe, which is a little bit more of like an experiential art thing where it's almost like going to an amusement park, but it's art oriented. And I just think this is kind of the beauty, whether it's something like that, or street art, or even in a sense, my kind of gateway into the art world was through concert posters. I think that it's nice to see the art world expanding a little bit, and people are finding new ways to find access to art.
Yeah.
I find it so interesting, like from, being an artist, I observe the art world maybe through more attentive eyes than some people. And I find it so fascinating, like the different subcultures. Like there's a very strong subculture of people following realism, and then some of that kind of leaks over into surrealism, and then there's like the whole street art thing, which has its own different styles within it, like the graffiti, the stencil. Like there's some stuff that I completely don't get, some stuff I think that's cool, and everyone sort of has that. It's so incredibly diverse. And
well, even us diving into like the concert poster world this year was wild. Like we had no idea there was actually a full subculture of people that they collect these like wildfire. I mean, they're on it, and that's all the art that they're into. But it's exciting
to see people like that into art, whether it's a style that you and I understand or like or not, doesn't even matter. It's just great to see the passion.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what I love about it. I'm thinking back to a party that I was at last weekend, and just making with small talk with somebody, and who obviously isn't following the art world closely, but they know I have an art gallery, and all of a sudden they were excited to start talking about Banksy and this newest stunt at Sotheby's.
Yeah, what's your thoughts on that? Are you willing to comment on that, or is that too dangerous to comment on that?
No. Happy to comment. But before I do that, just saying that, that sort of experience I think is great, because it created this, it creates this thing that people can hear about in the news, not know anything about the art world, maybe not even care about the art world, but they're going to have some sort of response, some sort of reaction to it. And those are the moments that I enjoy, because it's like, all right, here I am making small talk at a party with someone I don't really know.
Yeah.
But, this is like the access point, and this is then going to lead to these other interesting
It's pulled them in
conversations.
somehow.
Before you comment on that, I'll give you a few minutes to curate your thoughts. But
oh, I'm ready.
I'm
wanted to throw
that Banksy stunt. I find it very humorous and witty and clever and hilarious. But as an artist, I'm like, is it art? I really I question that, because if you took that sort of stunt and put it into another creative medium, like if I was a culinary artist and I was creating cuisine and I made this beautiful gourmet meal and I put thumbtacks in it, it would be a stunt, and maybe some people would find it funny, or but does that make it high art in cuisine? Or if you were a ballet dancer and you just decided to moon everyone, it's funny, it's hilarious, you'll get a lot of press for it, but so I'm really curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I personally, I think it was great. Even another conversation that I had recently with a couple of people in the art world, and they were a little bit down on it, whatever. And I was like, look, here we are standing around talking about it. And again, I think that for me, that's the most basic level of success for this stunt, because it's something where everybody, whether they appreciate it or not, they're having a reaction to it. And again, I think that's the core of what art is about. So I think it's great. It's something that hadn't happened before. It's treading on new territory, and at the same time, this is where I think Banksy, his or her, whoever Banksy is, the machine,
or they.
Is great with marketing, because it happens, it's all over the press, and then as soon as the talk starts to die down a little bit, all of a sudden there's this statement about now it's a totally new piece of art, it has a new name, and then all of a sudden everybody's talking about it again. So I admire the artists, the way that they can kind of manipulate society in general and have people, responding to it and then bringing it back
art
into the conversation.
So I agree with you. It's so clever and so witty and so brilliant on so many levels, marketing wise. Is there a difference between a stunt and memorabilia and art, in your opinion? If something creates a reaction, but there's maybe not the level of craft that another artist might have, just because the stunt gained, marketing and notoriety, does it make it more art, or is art and memorabilia, are they different things?
I think it can be however people want to define it. This makes me think back to an exhibition at the Denver Art Museum a few years ago. It was this artist, Tom Wesselman, and he has these big sculptures that are on the wall. And it was interesting because they included this letter from, I believe it was a curator at the Museum of Modern Art in New York, to Tom Wesselman, essentially addressing how they're going to, define and categorize these sculptures. Because Tom Wesselman was referring to them as drawings. And essentially what this curator said is, it's funny because here at the museum, and this is, 40 years ago or whatnot, and the curator's talking about how everybody's up in arms at the museum arguing about, how what sort of medium and how these are going to be defined, because they're saying these aren't drawings, these are sculpture. We can't call these drawings. And then and this person says, but I think it's really up to the artist to define, the terms that they want to use and how they want their work referred to. And I kind of think that applies to this. I think the rules can always shift and change.
Yeah, I just find it such an interesting topic. Everyone has such a different opinion. As a visual artist, I've always found it fascinating that it seems like the visual arts are probably the only artistic medium where there really is no standard. Like if you have, a professional cello player, you have to have a level of skill and there's a certain level of standard. The same with dance, the same with singing. But then with visual arts, there's no definition, there's no standard, there's no bar, there's no anything. And I don't know if I love that or hate that. I haven't decided yet.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a strange thing. You were asking me earlier about, how I got into the art world.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking back to this story of, I think you asked, are you an artist? And I play the guitar, but I'm not a visual artist. And the story I always tell is that when I was in 7th grade and I was graduating that year and going into 8th grade, I wanted to be in the advanced art class in 8th grade. And I was talking to the teacher about that. And she essentially said, well, your artwork isn't good enough. And at that moment, that shut me down. I kind of stopped making visual art because I'm like, oh, here's this teacher telling me that I'm not at the skill level that I should be at, or, whatever. And in the end, that's such bullshit because, it's crazy that a teacher would, kind of say something like that to somebody who's that young. Because why would you, if they're feeling a drive and a passion, why not give them that opportunity? But then again, now I look at it and I'm like, who are they to necessarily define, particularly at that age, what my skill level is? Because art, it's more than just making a drawing.
At that age especially, it's so impactful. I remember in 1st grade, I had a teacher kind of say the same thing to me because we had like an assignment at whatever age you are in 1st grade, like 6 or 7. And I hated following directions. And it was one of those like craft art assignments. And I was like, I don't want to follow step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I just want to do my own thing. And at the end of class, mine didn't look like at all like it was supposed to. And she kind of said a similar thing to me. And that comment discouraged me, but then I was kind of like the adolescent version of like, F you, I'm going to do whatever I want.
For sure.
Which I love because you guys are both like, David, you put yourself in a place of like, you're the teacher now that gets to decide, which is funny.
Yeah, we make our own rules, right, David?
Well, even then it's like, who am I to decide? I can decide what's best for, these projects that I'm putting together. But in the end, I just love it because as long as people are applying and pushing themselves, it's just fun to see how, as humans, we all kind of think differently and approach creativity from different angles. And, you kind of push through it and, had the right attitude in that moment. And it's just important to be yourself.
Yes. Well, when with that said, like, I know you told us a little bit about that Christopher Russell piece and the current exhibition, but what is the big story you're working on right now for the next exhibit?
Oh my gosh. So, always kind of juggling different projects and, thinking, 1, 2 years out, but now we're getting ready to return returned to Miami for my 11th year exhibiting there during Art Basel in December.
Sweet.
So
awesome.
I want to go.
with that, it's kind of the next. Oh my gosh, so much fun. For me, very exciting, but also not intimidating. But it makes me realize how large the art world
It is such a good time. I went there like years ago, and it was just so inspiring and so cool.
There's so much to see and experience, and I love those moments. So, right now I'm thinking about this art fair where we, set up this presentation and, kind of do it with this mindset of A, of course, trying to sell work, B, introducing this work and having conversations to various institutions and thinking about ways to, continue to grow the audience for the artists in the gallery, and then C, just kind of, connecting with art fans that are out there. And again, helping to build, audiences the best that we can. So we've got that on the horizon. And then another artist that I've been working with for many years now, Laura Ball, who just has these phenomenal watercolor works that I'm just so excited. Kind of this monumental show that will open up in mid-December. So those are kind of the two things that are on my mind right now.
Cool. So before we wrap up, can you please share with all of our listeners how people can find you and your gallery, and any other last words of wisdom or insights you'd like to share?
Yeah. So one thing that's kind of been on my mind, and this is totally random and silly, but I have two kids. I've got an 8-year-old boy, and we've been slowly kind of bringing him up to speed, and sharing these different cultural moments with him that have happened, since I've been alive. And all of a sudden one day he started talking about Saturday Night Live. So we kind of went on this hour or so binge over the weekend where I was just YouTubing a bunch of old classic Saturday Night Live episodes. And one of the ones that we watched and had to watch it, dug into, was the episode with More Cowbell.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Have you seen that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, it had been a couple of years for me, for sure. Hadn't really even crossed my mind. And, super funny. If anybody that's listening, if you're not familiar with us, please do yourself a favor and you Google More Cowbell. And then see where that takes you. But it's funny because there's this great line in there where, the guys that are portraying Blue Oyster Cult, they're talking to this fictional music producer, and they're like, oh, this is just, it's amazing that we're able to work with you, and they're kind of in awe. And this is Christopher Walken that's portraying this music producer. Walken. What's his name? Christopher Walken.
Christopher Walken, yeah.
Or Walken, yeah.
Walken. So he has this line where he's like, easy guys, I put my pants on just like the rest of you, one leg at a time, except once my pants are on, I make gold records. And I just thought that was like the funniest thing, but at the same time, I'm like, holy shit, that's a pretty profound statement, and thinking about, everybody that we interact with in life, and it's kind of at the core of, Jay, a lot of the conversations that we have when we're talking, but like thinking about, like how we're all leading these different lives and we're all busy, and, it's like whether you're talking to rock stars or, we're interacting with artists or, Chelsea, anybody that you're coming across on a daily basis, it's like, on its most basic level, we all we live our lives. We have, mundane tasks that we have to do on a daily basis. We all put our pants on one leg at a time. And then we go out and we do what we do. And, whether it's regardless of whatever it is, it's like, as long as you're out there and you're pushing yourself and you're being the best that you can be, then you're making your gold record. But
that's great.
I just thought that was kind of funny.
I love that a lot, especially like how we started the conversation off, that we share a mutual, very talented friend, Stefan from Dave Matthews. And as we've gotten to know him a bit, that is so appropriate because he's such a great guy, such a regular guy, and all those people that are similar, these musicians or artists or other people that we know, it's the music and the art that connects us all, and just such a beautiful connection at that.
And they're just like you and me, they put their pants on one leg at a time.
So one last question, because we have to ask everyone. So if I don't know where you grew up, David. Did you grow up in Colorado?
No, I grew up in upstate New York.
Oh, okay.
Rochester.
All right. Right coast.
Yeah.
Right coast. Yep.
So if I dropped you back in your childhood kitchen, what's your first thought?
Oh, shit. I guess that's my first thought right there.
What am I doing here?
What am I doing here?
I was just in my gallery. Now I'm in my kitchen.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, I don't. Oh, my gosh. That's a mind-blowing question right there. I think if I was back in that position, it would be, all of a sudden, I'm just kind of thinking about, like, if only I went through life knowing what I know now, like thinking about, like insecurities, or awkward moments or just, whatever. It's like none of that shit, it really matters. It's you're this unique person, and, you just got to find a way to like do what you do and love in life. And, if I could just talk to myself back then, I'd just say, just be true to who you are, be authentic, and bring good vibes to the world.
I love that.
Which you are doing, my friend. Hey guys, thank you for listening to another episode. We hope that you love what we're doing. If you do, please give us a long distance high five by leaving us a review and a rating on iTunes. If you go into the details of the show, you will see a link to leave a review. Also, please click subscribe if you haven't already. Whether you're listening on Spotify or iTunes or Stitcher or Google, click subscribe so you don't miss an episode. If you guys would like to follow us on social media and leave some comments or connect, please go to @ShiftingPerceptionsPodcast on social media. All show notes, links, references, etc. will be on shiftingperceptionspodcast.com. If you'd like to see more about me, Jay Alders, and my artwork, please go to jayalders.com or on any social media @jayalders. My amazing wife, Chelsea, can be found on ommamasdoulas.com or on social media @ommamasdoulas or @ChelseaAlders on Instagram. Again, guys, thank you for listening. We will catch you next week. Peace.